Have you ever studied for hours, felt productive, even exhausted, and then woke up the next morning realizing almost everything was gone? You read the same paragraph 3 times. You highlighted half the page. Last night it all made sense, but now? Your mind feels blank. Here's the strange part. In Japan, students remember over 2,000 kanji characters, not just for exams, but for life. And even stranger, some people feel more awake after 5 hours of sleep than after 8. So what if the problem isn't your intelligence? What if it's your rhythm? Most people believe that forgetting means failure, that if information disappears, it's because you didn't try hard enough, weren't smart enough, or lacked discipline. So you respond the only way you know how, by studying longer, sleeping more, pushing harder. But what if that logic is backwards? The human brain doesn't work like a storage box. It works more like a rhythm-based system, sensitive to timing, energy, and recovery. When you study against that rhythm, your brain protects itself by letting information fade. This is where Japanese habits look completely different. Instead of forcing long hours, many Japanese students sync learning with how the brain naturally works. They step outside in the morning to absorb natural light. They move their bodies gently for just 10 minutes. Studies show this alone can increase recall by around 20%. Before learning something new, they briefly recall what they studied yesterday. They eat until they are 80% full, avoiding the energy crash that makes focus collapse. And they sleep in cycles, not just by counting hours. None of these habits look impressive on their own, but together they form a system. One that works with the brain, not against it. And once you understand that system, forgetting stops being a mystery. It becomes a signal. In the early morning, before the city fully wakes up, many Japanese students step outside. Not to check their phones, not to rush, but simply to let their eyes meet natural light. This small habit matters more than it looks. Morning sunlight triggers the release of cortisol. Not the stress hormone people fear, but the hormone that tells your brain it's time to be awake, alert, and focused. Without this signal, your internal clock drifts. You may sleep 8 hours and still feel heavy, slow, and unfocused. That's why movement often comes next. Not intense workouts, just 10 minutes of light walking or stretching. Research shows that even this short burst of movement can increase memory recall by about 20%. Blood flow increases. Oxygen reaches the brain. Learning becomes physically easier. Only after this do many students sit down to study. And here's the detail most people miss. They don't start with new material. They start by recalling yesterday's lesson. From memory, without notes. This is active recall. It feels uncomfortable, sometimes frustrating, but it tells the brain that the information matters. You'll also notice something else. A clean desk, a simple ritual, tea, not energy drinks. These aren't productivity hacks. They are signals, quiet cues that tell the brain this is focus time. Before the first word is read, the brain is already prepared to remember. Most people study by reading. They reread notes, they highlight sentences, they watch explanations again and again. It feels productive. It feels safe. But this is where memory quietly fails. Japanese learning systems rely far less on rereading and far more on remembering without support. This is called active recall. When you try to pull information out of your mind instead of pushing it in, the brain is forced to work. Neural connections strengthen. Even remembering incorrectly helps because the correction that follows rewires the memory more deeply. This is why forgetting isn't the enemy. Avoiding recall is. Japanese students also use spaced repetition. Instead of cramming, they revisit information briefly on day 1, day 2, day 4, and day 7. Each session is short, but each one happens just as the brain is about to forget. The perfect moment to reinforce memory. There is also the idea of Kaizen, improving by 1% every day. Not dramatic changes, not overnight transformation, just tiny gains repeated consistently. Rather than study 3 hours, the goal becomes one recalled concept, one clarified mistake, one small improvement. Time is structured too. A common rhythm is 40 minutes of focused work, followed by 10 minutes of rest. Rest isn't wasted time. It's when the brain organizes what you just learned. And if a day fails, there's one rule: never miss twice. Consistency matters more than intensity. This system doesn't rely on motivation. It relies on design. Here's a paradox most people never question. Why do some nights of 5 hours of sleep leave you feeling clear and awake, while other nights of 8 hours make you feel slow, heavy, and exhausted? The answer isn't sleep quantity, it's sleep timing. Your brain sleeps in cycles, roughly 90 minutes each, moving through light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. If you wake up in the middle of a cycle, especially during deep or REM sleep, your brain feels unfinished, groggy, disoriented, drained. That's why waking at the wrong moment can ruin your day, even after a long night. Japanese sleep culture quietly respects this rhythm. Rather than chasing a perfect number of hours, many people focus on regular sleep timing and clean transitions into rest. This connects to another Japanese principle, hara hachi bu, eating until you're about 80% full. Heavy meals late at night steal blood flow from the brain and disrupt sleep quality. Lighter dinners lead to deeper rest and clearer mornings. There's also a simple learning habit tied to sleep. Just 10 minutes of recalling what you learned before bed, without notes, gives your brain something to organize overnight. During sleep, memories are strengthened and stored. You're not learning while asleep. You're saving what you already recalled. And finally, darkness matters. Reducing light, avoiding screens, letting the nervous system slow down. Sleep isn't passive. It's the final step of learning. Most people describe learning as something they try to do. I'm trying to focus. I'm trying to study better. I'm trying to be disciplined. But in Japanese philosophy, lasting change doesn't begin with effort. It begins with identity. There's a quiet shift from doing to being, from I'm forcing myself to study to I am someone who learns efficiently. When learning becomes part of who you are, habits stop feeling heavy. This is why Japanese students often teach what they learn. They explain concepts to classmates. They write short summaries. Some even share insights online. Teaching forces clarity. If you can explain something simply, your brain has truly organized it. Equally important is what happens between learning sessions. Silence, stillness, short breaks. Think of learning like a tree. The visible growth happens above ground, but the real work, the strengthening, happens underground, in the roots. These quiet gaps allow the brain to restructure information, to connect ideas, to transform effort into understanding. When you stop chasing motivation and start building systems, learning stops feeling like a battle. You don't need to become smarter. You need to become aligned. If there's one lesson hidden inside Japanese study habits, it's this. Learning works best when it follows the brain's natural rhythm. Morning light and gentle movement prepare your mind to focus. Active recall teaches your brain what matters. Small improvements, just 1% a day, compound quietly through Kaizen. Studying in cycles allows understanding to form. Eating until 80% full protects your energy. Sleeping in rhythm preserves memory. And shifting your identity turns effort into habit. None of this requires more willpower. It requires better alignment. So tomorrow, don't try to change everything. Choose one small action. Step outside for 10 minutes before studying. Recall yesterday's lesson before learning something new. Turn off your phone earlier tonight. And ask yourself a different question. Who would I become if I learned in rhythm, not in resistance?